Hello and good evening, good night, good morning, wherever you are listening to us. This is Bold Voices for W, coming at you from Ingersoll, Ontario, and with your host, Khadijah Haliru. Today, I'm bringing you a very special episode because over the first day, today's New Year's Day, I'm sitting here with my special person, my husband. Over the past week, we've actually had some very eye-opening conversations since discovering that we have different, views about our immigration to Canada. We realized that one of our main sources of friction stems from how we interpret the Canadian experience, where the risk taker in him, in me, or in both of us often feels stifled by the need to be risk averse in this new environment. What's amazing is that despite our differences, we found common ground in acknowledging the impact immigration has had on our lives. This shared understanding has been a powerful starting point for healing. It's not just about pointing out the struggles, but recognizing the effort we both put into this journey and how it has shaped us individually and as a couple. This is where we begin by agreeing that while this path hasn't been easy, it has taught us resilience, patience, and the importance of meeting each other halfway. This discussion is about finding those moments of clarity and using them to rebuild together, as we hope our community also follows to gain a better understanding of who we are and the immigration experience. So thank you for joining me and welcome Abdul Haliru.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Yeah, and Happy New Year to everyone, wherever you are in the world.
Yes.
Brand new year, brand new opportunities, and challenges and what have you.
And we're wishing you all the best in the new year. So we're going to take it from here. I think after we had the last conversation and I said, you know what, why don't you hop on, let's do this podcast. For me, this is going to be our live therapy session because I just realized we keep butting heads over these same issues. And I think for so many immigrants, this will resonate. And for those who don't even understand the immigration story, how hard or how easy, how difficult it is to different people, I think for us, we're going to share our perspective just so that you can get to learn about sometimes what you don't necessarily hear about in the media and the processes that people have to overcome or go through. So you have a list of questions you want to ask me for the benefit of even our immigrant community and people who are even still thinking about coming to this country of ours, this beautiful Canada. What are the most common questions you keep hearing?
Sometimes, yeah, statements.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the regular one I hear all the time is, "Oh, life is perfect here
In Canada.
in Canada."
Well, what do you say to that then?
I say that your definition of perfect is different from mine.
Well, the thing is, while Canada offers many opportunities, it's essential to acknowledge that the challenges that come with it, like adjusting to a new culture or system and expectations are all different for all of us, right?
True.
For us, I think when we chose to leave Nigeria, you left 2003. So it's 21 years for you almost. And for me, 2004, February, when I joined you, we didn't even think of Canada at the time. You left for your master's. At the peak of your career, you chose to leave to go get an MBA. And for most people, they feel like we don't have the option of doing these things back home. Sometimes we just choose to do them to get an exposure or a new experience that we could benefit from. So tell me, let's go back in time. What did you want to achieve at the time when we left for your MBA?
MBA was about self-discovery, new challenges. I had a fantastic job back in Nigeria, and made a lot of people question, why are you leaving your job? But I needed new challenges, and I needed a better focus, and I was bored out of my mind after doing that job for 13 years in maritime shipping. It was time to do something else. So I went ahead, got me a student visa, and I remember having a conversation with my dad, That was perhaps the most difficult one, to let him know that, hey, listen, I have decided that, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna quit my job. And he was like, oh, okay. What are you gonna do? I said, oh, I'm gonna go get me going back to school, and then, kind of went on real quickly from there. But yeah, everybody was on board with me once I explained to them why I was leaving and what I wanted to achieve with my MBA.
I remember I wasn't always on board.
Like I said, once I explained why I was leaving.
Because the perception is a lot of people think that that is our first, opportunity. I mean, that is such a huge opportunity for us that we didn't have options. And I think when you think about, in my case, where I had the best job at the time, I was having a ball at my work. You were having a different experience and wanted new challenges. People just don't understand that. For us, as a young couple, it's an adventure. It's a new experience. Just like you want to travel from here, North America, and see the world. That's the same thing that we all have. We're all human. We all have the same aspirations. And that was for you, your major reason why. And I remember we spent 3 years in the States, and basically you finished your MBA. And as soon as you were done with the experience of the Bush administration, being Muslim in the US, I know we didn't really have the best time. We were very worried that our mail were open when we received them. Our phones were getting, what do you call that?
Tapped.
Because, and when we pick up the
DHS,
phone, yes, when we pick up the phone to call home and we say salam alaikum, which is in essence means peace be upon you, the FBI would definitely tap in to listen. So it was a very uneasy time, and you find as a Muslim consistently trying to explain yourself to others and why 9/11 wasn't your making and why you didn't condone that and all of that. Anyway, that was the climate in which we operated in the US. But I remember you deciding again, why don't we go to Canada? So what brought that up again?
Canada. Well, a lot of things happened back in the States, some of which you've already mentioned, but more importantly, was at the time, Nigeria was, my intention when I went to do an MBA was to complete my MBA and go back to Nigeria. I had no intention of coming to Canada at all or going to anywhere else for that matter. But toward the end of my MBA, just rounding up, that would have been 2005, Nigeria was at a crossroads. There were so many things going on that weren't in line with our core values. Okay. And so I started looking at options. Okay, if I don't want to go back to Nigeria, what were my options? And one of the options was US. You have to get a H-1B visa. The whole process of being legal in the US. First of all, I wasn't going to do anything illegal. I wasn't going to live in the US illegally. Nor was I going to be a professional student and keep going to school back round the clock, right? Back to back. So the only other option that was the lowest hanging fruit was to come to Canada. And so we applied for Canadian permanent resident. You see?
And here we are.
And didn't take that long, and we were in Canada. So.
Right. I remember I was thinking very highly of Canada, though, because we definitely heard it was a better place to raise kids. It was less violent. It was quieter. And I think all those things appealed to me. Plus the fact that I had a few friends that had always, aspired to come back to Canada since being born here, and we grew up in Nigeria together. But it was just, we had some idea of what Canada was, and we thought it was definitely a better option than the States. So like you said, a lot of times people are asking and they think Canada is better than Nigeria in every way. And we're the first to say, hold on. What do you say about that? Because it seems like they dismiss the strength of the Nigerian culture, the community, and the values, which we still hold very dear. And there's more to say to that than,
Canada is better than Nigeria in every way. What a bold statement that is. Okay, we're Nigerian Canadian, so we wear both shoes. We know where they pinch. Nigeria has its very, very awesome side, and so does Canada. But The difference, I guess, is how is perspective, is also exposure and knowledge of the two countries.
Yeah. I think for so many Nigerians who haven't been out of the country, they kind of gauge the better place to go where they see the trend of Nigerians going. They base it on, okay, everybody's going to Canada. Canada must be the best place on earth.
The Japa thing.
Yes. So which to an extent we must agree, Canada has given us enough of a level playing field to I mean, when your systems work and things work perfectly, and the government does what they do as basic infrastructure and offerings and stuff, Nigerians will see that as a lot of they will see a lot of value in that. But the governments do the same thing everywhere. And Nigeria, you have a government who is consistently struggling to try, to push us forward. Every administration comes and tries to push us forward to the best that they know. But we cannot for certain say that Nigeria is better than Canada in every way. So what's the next thing you hear commonly from people?
Immigrating fixes everything. All I gotta do is put my 2 feet in Canada and I'm on top of the world.
Moving to a new country doesn't automatically solve personal and financial challenges. In fact, you want to talk about how that mistake of selling everything and thinking you would come back.
Don't get me started.
So the most common thing people think is you sell everything, you come here, you hit the ground running. What people don't realize is in Nigeria, you don't owe a lot of debt. You live in a house, you rent a place, or you live in a house, you pay the bills. There is no such thing as the kind of weight that is on you here. The accountability that we have here is not so much in Nigeria. So a lot of people don't even feel the accountability because someone is always picking up the tab for you, whether it's someone in the family or community or your old grandfather's house or father's house that you didn't ever have to pay rent for and everybody defaults to it. So coming here, one of the biggest shocks, I think, is housing. Don't you think?
Housing is one of them. More importantly, it's employment. So, and generating an income, right? With income, you get housing. Maybe. And I say maybe because when you come to a new country, a developed country like Canada, the mindset, the shift, the economy, and everything else is the opposite of what you have in Nigeria. In Canada, it's designed for you to take, it's all about your credit, okay? How credit worthy you are, that determines how much money you can get, and that determines what services are available to you. In Nigeria, up until recently that I'm aware of, is the opposite. Cash is king. If you got the money, you can rent a house, you can buy whatever car you want, you can do whatever you want. In Canada, you can't do that. That doesn't add any value to your long-term well-being, financial well-being in Canada.
Yeah, and some of us make that mistake where you come here and you want to just spend cash and you don't want to have credit and you just keep going at it. We made that mistake.
Yeah, I didn't want nothing to do with credit cards. I'm like, forget about it.
I begged you, let's get a credit card. You said no. So. I said okay, and it took us a while to learn that credit is basically how the government or the system gets to know who you are. So for new people who come, you want to definitely get some credit, even if it's secured credit, so you can start opening up that credit file to build some credit worthiness is what we would call it. Even before you get a job, if you come with any money, I would recommend that people do that. They go put that money down and get a credit card. And that way you are able to establish some form of credibility so that you get a job. Then you find that you can actually be a normal human being who can perhaps even rent a house and do other things. But anyways, when it comes to cash, you can't get cash when you've spent all your cash and you don't have a job. And like I said, immigration sells this country so well. It seems like you have a job waiting for you when you hit the ground. And you come here and we spent how long you spent? I spent 6 months.
We spent 6 months in Canada.
6 months without a job.
Before we got our first jobs.
And yeah.
And yeah, And so if you and you got to understand, this is 6 months of a family of 5, wife, husband, and 3 kids. The youngest of which was what?
4 or 5 months.
6 months old.
6 months old.
So basically, you're buying diapers, baby food, and all that. The kid don't know.
Yeah.
They don't want to know. Okay. So when they open the refrigerator, there better be milk in there. There better be all their supplies in there, right? So yeah. So 6 months without a job.
But there's something Canada does for the new resident. The new resident in the days where most of us came as permanent residents, there's something that we went through. We went through the ringer of knowing that Canada wants you to have enough to last for, 4 months at least.
Guys, don't lie about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Canada tells you how much it would take on an average family when you're arriving. It gives you an estimate of how many people and how much per person. So it depends on your family size, you know how much you should need. And I think if we took that really seriously, we would not really end up where our expectations are so high and then our disappointment is so high. But today we see the government open the floodgates to immigration through schooling. And they want students because we need jobs. Of course, after COVID, there was this whole massive influx of students. But now you see them hit the ground with $0 after paying all the fees to the school, can't afford a place to stay. So that's the difference, guys, between what we experience and what we see today. But the thing is, that coming to Canada and finding that job right away is not guaranteed. Some people are lucky. Depends on your field. You might even get a job before you hit the ground. And that's very rare cases. But some of us have come here and had to go through the system to volunteer, which is very, very effective in helping you even find that first job before you get the job. And so we had to go through that and finally settle in and start paying rent and all of that.
Yeah, I think you were doing crisis management.
Yeah, I did that. And I volunteered for the crisis line for a full year in Vancouver before. And in the 3rd month of doing that, just having that on your resume and applying to Rogers, because I came from MTN, which was Africa's largest telecom. So I had a lot of experience in telecom, and Rogers was kind of behind at the time we joined. They were just establishing the GSM infrastructure. And I was like, wow, you guys are still on CDMA and TDMA. But anyways, we were able to integrate, and it was not easy, but we did. And volunteering is one of the fastest ways that we found to do that. You apply to the police.
Yeah,
RCMP and all of that. And then before we even settled down, we decided Vancouver was not it. And we moved to Ontario after a year because we couldn't afford a house, even after renting for a year. It was just too expensive.
We couldn't afford to buy a house.
That's what I mean.
You said we couldn't afford a house.
Okay. Okay, we couldn't afford to buy a house. And so we came to Ontario. Again, what other questions did we get in Ontario?
A couple conflicts.
Oh.
Everything that happened.
Well, because we moved here. Everything went wrong because we moved here.
Yeah.
And I think that was our first challenge. Well, immigration can be a strain on relationships. We had to discover whether we made the right choice. At some point, you gave up and decided that I was going to go back to Nigeria and hold on to my ties. And you did that for 10 years.
Well, even before that, actually, I remember so we moved here from the US, right? So we actually
with an B and a PMP. So I remember we flew to Ontario and we drove to Vancouver. Yeah, we drove to Vancouver. Yeah,
we drove to Vancouver from Seattle, right? So I remember driving just after all the immigration formalities at the border, and driving across the border, and I look at the roads, and I parked on the side of the road. And I parked right next to me. The car went down her window and said, "What's going on?" I think we made a mistake. The roads are so tiny. But then again, what I didn't realize was those were the back roads, right? They were just going through some rural areas, coming down into the Vancouver area. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was that, but after a while, Canada can get to you. And it's all
right. Canada getting to us was just the effort was beginning to seem a lot was a little returns, and you decided to go back to Nigeria, is where we were, right? And so you went back, and I definitely was full time steaming ahead at work, and you were doing the Nigerian thing, which seemed to look better than even being here. And I started to question myself at some point before the tides turned, and then you started to question Nigeria again and
Yeah,
came back. So since coming back and starting, back now, people see us as I remember people always reaching out to us to ask advice back in Brampton, where we worked at Rogers. And we just became that couple that people would come in and, oh, you need to talk to Abdul and Khadijah. They've been here a while. And people just always had enough information that we just needed a little bit of direction that we gave people. But now it's not the same. So should immigration be something that you think the government does a better job at educating people on?
The government of Canada? Oh, it's all about expectations, okay? So you gotta have measured expectations when you come to a new country because you're new. Nobody knows you. Okay? You shouldn't come in there. For example, I recall there was a couple that came from Saudi Arabia, and the wife is a nuclear scientist, and she went to the nuclear plant and wanted to apply for a job in her full Islamic regalia. Now, even though they don't know you, right? So you don't have your social insurance number is new. You don't have a track record here. Nobody knows who you are. Nobody knows you don't have security clearance. So there are certain types of jobs that you can apply for when you're new to Canada, and certain types that, I would love to say you can apply for every and any job, but the reality on ground is usually different. So, yeah.
All right. So basically, after that, we reality on ground was different. We settled in. We've come a long way. Then in 2016, you came back from Nigeria and you decided we're moving out of here. We're moving. And this time for me, we moved from Omaha. We moved from Michigan first to Omaha. We moved from Omaha to Vancouver. We moved from Vancouver to Brampton. In 2016, you were like, we're moving again to a quieter place because I've had it with the big cities. And I will tell you right now, that was one of the most difficult times for me because I had just launched my stew business and I thought, okay, let's go find a place that maybe we can settle in and make it work. And that was what brought us to Ingersoll. So hitting the ground running, trying to start my business. I remember how hard it was. People didn't even understand what I was talking about when I wanted to set up a business for my stew. I tried to get people to understand I needed to find a place to hire 1 or 2, 3 people, set up kind of industrial processing plant. And with all the money we came with, it's been 2, 3 years. No one understood. Basically, I had to default to my skincare, which was my hobby. And grateful that, Ingersoll embraced that. So I think the podcast for me in telling our story is, I remember you said some words profoundly the other day. You said, after going through the stress of 2024, being investigated for things that I've done and said and support and amplifying the voices of those who write letters to me, being reprimanded for even speaking, challenging how I speak and what I was doing on social media. I felt like, wow, when I got home and you watched me go through this mental torture, really. And you said, you said something, I can't remember how you said it. You said, people don't really know who you are until they know your true story or something like that. And I'm thinking, yeah, it's easy for people to just see an immigrant and see us come and think, what do we know? Or why should we be the one to be able to see that or say that? And I just feel like it's time for people to get to know us, to understand our story. And that's why we're doing this. But you have some questions you said you were going to ask me just to maybe help me go through what people in Ingersoll should know about me, right? So let's go. It's your turn to maybe ask me the questions.
All right, I guess I'm going to start. What first drew you to leadership and advocacy, and how has that evolved since we came to Ingersoll?
Well, I've always been that way, right? I've always been the one that gets in trouble for standing up for someone else. But then we come to Ingersoll. Actually, remember I told you Ingersoll reminded me of Zaria. Growing up in Zaria in a small town that was so diverse, multicultural. At the time, we had we had a lot of expatriates. We had a lot of British people, a lot of, Asians and Arabs, Lebanese and Egyptians. There was a time in the 70s where the country was still just coming out of British rule. We had a lot of infrastructure that was still manned and operated by the British, both public and private sector. So I grew up in a place where my basic grade school, kindergarten, we were only 5 Black kids in the classroom of 25. So that tells you how diverse we were. Every other person was either Caucasian, Arab, or Indian, Asian, or, like including Chinese. So I kind of didn't ever feel like I couldn't speak my truth because we played together, we fought together, we were just kids. And I think maybe that's where I get my outlook on life, that we all have equal opportunities and no one can take me or make me feel less than. So I've been doing that. I remember my best friend for many years said we became best friends because I stood up to a bully for her. And that's how she kind of leaned on me from then on till we kind of lost touch. So I feel I've always had it in me. Plus, I had a dad who was also very out there. He contributed a lot to our school. My parents volunteered a lot. We had a very, very good network and social system going on in the summers and for end of year parties and concerts. We just were thriving as a community together with all sorts of people across the world. And I think that's where it comes. Next.
Awesome. So, how has our immigration journey shaped your vision for the kind of impact you want to make in this community?
Yep, exactly. All that we talked about. The fact that it's not easy, the fact that we had to start from scratch, the fact that we had to spend time and look for work, the fact that we had to volunteer for many years in many places, and the fact that when you go to a new place, you jump in, you just want to give back. And I think because of the experience we have, I realize that not everybody understands how prepared we are. People are not educated enough about what immigration is in this country. And I think for Ingersoll, I want people to understand that immigration is a tough choice. When we left Nigeria, we were living the life. You had so much money. I don't know how you even, we used to fight about how much you spent money. That was our fight. I wish we could have those fights again because you had 2 cars. I had 2 cars. We had a driver. I had 2 house helps. One would take the kid to school with the driver in one car, and I would go to work in another car. You had a car, you would go to work. And on the weekend, you just love showing off in your E-class or your M-class to go to the club or whatever. And I just remember feeling very frustrated that I wanted us to spend money in different ways and you had your own ways. Today, we don't even have the money to argue over. So it's like we're thinking about how best to spend our money. And if you ask me if we should have moved from Nigeria maybe 20 years backwards, I would have still said no. And I feel like I was always right in that decision. But anyways, the immigration journey has made me feel confident to speak the truth, to educate where there's a gap in knowledge, to inform where people don't know, especially the myth about Islam and being an educated Black person, which most Nigerians are overeducated when we come to this country. As like you heard, Abdul was an MBA with a PMP right off the bat when we came in and could not find, a spot to really take on that challenge because he was a new immigrant. And then you had to kind of give 5 years of your life before you get to the position you want. And so there's that confidence that comes because we already aspired to be better than where we came from. To so many, it's overconfidence. To so many, it's being too courageous to speak your truth. But this is who we are. No one can take it away from us because immigration has made us expect something. And even though it didn't give it to us, we were resilient enough to rise through and come back to where we are now. And so nobody can tell me anything other than what I know for truth that I'm going to speak my truth. So it's definitely shaped my vision. And the impact I choose to make in the community is the same impact we make everywhere we go, trying to speak our truth and bring our experiences to the table.
Awesome. So, what does being only the vice member of council mean to you, and how do you carry that responsibility?
Yeah, it means a lot that I had enough people in this community to trust me and vote for me. And I think it also came, by no mistake, it came from having enough people who knew me as a person, not saw me from afar that I am a hijabi or that I'm a Muslim or that I'm a Black person. People who genuinely got to know me, the friends that I have in this community. And I think the encounters I had through my businesses helped everyone see me more as human. And so when you see me sit on council, I'm not sitting there lightly. I know that people who have voted for me are counting on me to be the Khadijah they know they voted for. And so I'm not going to let council, make me a different person. It's not going to silence me, or it's not going to help change my views, because I kind of knew for certain what the issues in this community were. And I'm still trying to get that out and speak on the behalf of people. So yeah, it might get me in trouble here and there, but I'm asking the right questions. I'm asking the questions I think my community needs to hear. And as a new person on council, I think it's helpful, because when you're too comfortable there, you tend to forget why you got there. You tend to feel like someone else is being over pushy. But no, that's what we voted for. And I think, yeah, it means a lot to me that I'm there. And if I'm there at all, I'm going to do the best I can for the people who I know voted me for their different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have to say? What do you think?
I I think it's a refreshing change to have someone on council that can ask the tough questions, not just the regular questions. Oh, blah, 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 blah. We're doing this, we're doing that. And everybody says, oh, all the yay, all the nay, and the fast. Boom. Level thumbs down. It doesn't work that way. So, and the community is, I think, just from the little feelers of feedback we get here and there, that I have been privy to of heard from the community is, people like to hear those type of questions, the in-depth questions that ask the difficult questions of how things were arrived at, how costs were arrived at, how decisions were arrived at,
Exactly.
and how is this important to Ingersoll? Whatever it is that is being discussed, how is that important to the town? And I think that's a refreshing change from the council that we watched when we first moved here, right? So.
Exactly. And I think we were lucky that we were watching, because we, again, are always concerned about the communities in which we live. We seek to contribute. So we want to understand the community, understand the structure. And we were truly disappointed in the way that we would see council operate. Like, we don't even know how they came about that decision, or we don't even understand it. So I think a lot of people were tired of that. And people just really, like you said, need to understand the depth of what we're talking about. It's not just, yeah. If I had to say rules should change, it should be that every councillor gets a chance to say something about everything publicly before it is even moved. Because in this case, anyway, we're still making changes, and I hope it gets better. So yeah, you have another question for me?
Can you share why it's so important to you to represent everyone in Ingersoll, regardless of who voted for you?
Yeah, because everyone deserves, when you're voted in, regardless of what anyone or any people believe, you're not just voted in for the people who voted you, you're voted in to represent everyone, because we're a one-tier council. We're representing the whole town. We don't have, in other places where communities vote wards, where, say, let's say, for example, Harrisville was a ward, I would represent, say, a ward and maybe represent this community and our interests. But when you're voted in Ingersoll, you represent the whole town. And so I'm very, welcoming to hear what other people in the community are saying. And I love it when I get emails from people across town that just send me random emails about issues that I never even knew about. I would visit and try to learn more about those issues and try to understand them, because again, people have different experiences. We're all coming from different places and different experiences and different expectations. And I love it, especially when I hear from people who are the older generation here, who have a lot of history to share with you when they try to explain the genesis of a problem with you. So, yeah, it's important to understand that you represent everybody. The only difference is when you represent the minority groups that have never really had a voice and you now bring the issues up, so it seems to the other person who has always had the privilege of being heard and seen that there is a challenge to the status quo. But in essence, you're just trying to also give voice to those who've been voiceless for so long. And I think it only adds value that I'm the only one who has the courage to bring it up, because the norm is that they would normally not even see that as an issue because there are not enough people to make noise about it.
Okay. So how do you navigate the challenges of being a voice for the underrepresented without sidelining anyone else?
That's what I'm still learning. Just got in trouble for that because people thought I was doing something the wrong way when even I've checked the rules and I didn't think I was breaking any rules. Like I did everything right for every step I've taken. I've called and asked questions, but you get into trouble politically. They want to show like you are ignorant about some things, and I'm not ignorant about anything. So, like I said, I'm representing everybody, and everybody is in my heart when I think and make decisions or ask questions.
Awesome. So we've both seen how much effort you put into every project. What keeps you going when the challenges feel overwhelming?
I come and I talk your head off.
Brother.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah. The only time I can really say the challenge is this year where I was accused of something I truly didn't do. And I talked through it. I got therapy. I tried to stay silent. I basically try to reflect. And that's why we kind of are launching Bold Voices, because I feel like you said, people don't really know our story. And when they get to know you, then no one can determine your story for you. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm going to speak my truth. I'm hoping that anyone who listens gets to understand where we are in our headspace and why we do what we do. And that's it.
Okay.
It'll keep me maybe sane by speaking more.
Okay. What role do you think our families' experiences play in the perspective and passion you bring to your work?
Same thing.
Okay.
Same thing that we just talked about. It's me thinking what my kids would be proud of, or what they would say, or what they would think. And I remember being them being very supportive when I said I was gonna run, and Hanan being a lawyer in the making, graduating this year, alhamdulillah. Nabil being a political science student, wanting to go for law school as well, and Abdul Malik being a cybersecurity person. I feel like they understand the world that we're living right now. And rules and regulations are things that we've always taught them are important. We're law-abiding citizens. That's why it's painful when we seem to be seen to be breaking rules. But yeah, I think when I think of all of that in a nutshell, it makes us just keep standing up for what's true.
Okay. So if there's one misconception about you or your role that you want to address, what will it be?
The misconception is that I represent everyone, and it seems like I'm representing just a faction. No, I'm representing everyone. And when you hear about some specific factions like the Black community or the Indian community or the Muslim community, which I'm a part of that immigration story and I can relate to every immigrant. I'm a part of the Muslim community. I can relate to the Muslim issues. I'm a Black person. I can relate to all the lived experiences that we all share. It is a powerhouse of intersectionality that makes me who I am right now. And it just really, it's heavy, but I feel like that's exactly what makes me who I am right now and how I tick.
Mm-hmm. So looking at all the initiatives you've led, which one do you think best represents who you are and why?
I think the diversity committee, it will not be understood right away why that is very important. For a very small town, during the election and during the campaign, I heard from so many people, not just Black people, not just Indigenous people, not just immigrants. I heard from even white people that grew up in places like Brampton, Bradford, Paris, that moved to Ingersoll and say they've been here for the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And they were shocked that we pay the same taxes, but we don't have this and we don't have that and we don't have this. But when people think about the diversity committee, they think about it in terms of such a painful structure of arranged rules and regulations, and it was simply put in place to be a committee to bring different people together, diverse voices together, so that council can see deeper beyond what they normally would see as individuals representing the whole town. So a committee will allow people to really dig deep into the issues and bring them to council's attention. And so that again might be something they misunderstand if you look at it in a very shallow-minded way. But I think the diversity committee for me will allow Ingersoll to keep up to par to so many developing small towns in the very near future. And I'm very proud of it.
Awesome. So what's your hope for Ingersoll's future, and how do you see your role in helping to shape it?
I think the future of Ingersoll is bright. The people are becoming quite aware of how decisions are made. They're very interested in holding council accountable. I feel like we need more input, though. We need more engagement from the community. If I wasn't engaged, I wouldn't question enough to want to even run, because you live here. Municipalities, affect the direct lives of individuals more than any other tier of government. So you want to be aware of what they're doing, how they're impacting your pocket, your taxes. So for me, in the near future, even if I don't win another election, I know for sure I will bring till the end my A game in asking the right questions and bringing new ideas. And I think challenging those new ideas has been the biggest obstacle for me, because it's easy to just keep doing the things you do over and over again. But I think challenging those new ideas, bringing them in, and challenging the status quo to see better new ways of doing things will be where I will continue to add my voice. And because of them, I think the future of Ingersoll will be better, because people ask more questions and will demand more accountability, and will choose different kinds of people so that Ingersoll Council actually becomes more engaging and reflective of the people that live here.
Awesome.
That was a really tough interview.
Yeah, I know.
You wrote your questions down?
No.
Okay.
I just like the tough questions, that's all.
Okay. Well, that was interesting. I really appreciate that. I get that out, because, yeah, I feel like at the end of the day, people need to know where we are coming from. We will continue to talk and interview voices that help shed light on what the challenges of living in Canada, living in Ingersoll, or just even being someone who immigrates within Canada to different places, like from big cities to small towns, and our expectations. And so I think, yeah, but I want to ask you one last question, Baba.
Okay, then. She wants to put me on the spot now, yeah?
This year has been the roughest year for us. In fact, we fought more this year than any year.
No, it hasn't. That's a lie. Today is the first of the year.
Okay. 2024. Like, I challenged so many things, and I know that you were just, you sometimes you say, I'm saying that because I don't get the full picture, or I don't have the full picture. And I realize that I sometimes don't have the full picture. But again, the inflation that hit Canada this year, the lifestyle changes that every family has had to go through, the change of careers and disappointments that we've had to deal with. We've experienced the most racism, honestly, has happened to me in the last couple of years than ever before in our 20 years of being here. It's challenged me in so many ways. My mental health was affected, and I can now see why they say racism directly impacts health. Discrimination for anyone directly impacts their mental health. And so how do you feel at this point in time, someone who's becoming a senior in a very short while, how do you feel summing up our experience in Canada versus if we had been back home? Like, what is your assumptions about what would have been?
Well, I will say Canada is a tough place. Okay. So some of the issues you've mentioned, there are a lot more issues, but we have to face them. We have to recognize that they exist and, decide on how we want to deal with them and how to navigate the system so you are not impacted directly or overwhelmingly impacted by those issues that abound in our society here today.
Examples,
there are, like you mentioned, there's discrimination,
yeah,
right? So even at work, not just on the street or whatever.
Systemic ones.
There's a systemic discrimination. And so you may be triple qualified for a position, but you don't get it just because you're a person of color, right? So these are things that,
I think that is one of the biggest problems. When you talk about that, you just hit the nail on the head. When you talk about being overqualified, I just want to add a little bit for our listeners. If you're listening this far, trust me, this is one of the best things that you'll hear today. Somebody asked me just 2 days ago at the shop, if I had to come to Canada 20 years ago, knowing what I know now, would I come?
I wouldn't.
And I said to her, I don't think I would.
I wouldn't.
And so she says, but when you come here for a better life, and I said, let me correct you there. When this is the important thing that people need to know, which people don't know, is that not everybody you see who's come here came here for a better life and got a better life. Two-prong. We didn't come here for necessarily a better life. We came here for new experiences because we had a better life back home. Like we just said in the earlier.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, no. We had you got a bonus of.
It's okay. Let's not go into all of that. But
something that is an annual salary here in 1 year, and we would live on that as a bonus.
2 years.
Exactly. So trust me, we had a better life, but we came for new experiences. And then we realized at the level that we came, that we wanted even better, that we realized we had to go rock bottom to start all over. And then we build ourselves right back up, which makes us, compared to the person who's here, who's nonchalant and not as driven, to see us as, oh, we work 10 times as harder. We're just working harder. You think we're working harder because we want it so bad, or we're just going through the motions because we feel like, let's just get what we have to do out of the way and get to where we need to be. And that is a misconception, because people say, oh, they want to do all these things. And another thing is, you think we've come here for the skilled work that Canada asks, but there's a misconception. The skilled work we hear about in Africa is Canada's looking for skilled workers. You advertise it so well. And skilled people are carpenters, healthcare workers.
But those are the skilled trades.
And trades so let's use the word trades instead of skilled work, because we came with the skilled worker program, and the skilled worker program was perhaps looking for more skilled trades than it was looking for. Because
so here's the thing. So when you apply, they want to know, do you have a bachelor's degree? Do you have a master's degree? Do you have a PhD? And so on and so forth.
10 years
right?
experience.
And so many years of experience, and you have to prove and show all the paperwork, get your transcripts and everything sent to the Canadian immigration, right? But then you get to Canada and you go, okay, I have a master's degree. I'm going to apply for a job that requires a master's degree and I have all the years and everything that I need to actually get that job.
With the confidence, because
full blast ahead, right? You apply for the job, you get the same, it's almost like it's pre-typed.
Yes, pre-typed. We get that common email. Unfortunately, we have
decided to go with a different candidate who best fits our needs.
And that
statement is part of the systemic discrimination and racism.
Because
if you don't,
people that are better suited to them, that they're more comfortable with, not the most compatible to that job.
If your name is not Tom, Steve, and if it's a name they're not used to, forget about it.
And then even in the interviews, I will tell you right now, from even interviews, knowing how confident you are in some interviews and how easy the questions were and how sure you were of the answers, you prepare, even you go there and you have a good rapport and you leave. And I can almost tell every single interview where I'm going to get that letter, because I could sense a little bit of intimidation or a little bit of unpreparedness to receive me that confident. And then you get that letter because of
I'll give an example. I'll summarize it, make it really short. So when we newly moved to Canada, I applied for this job with a big corporation. It's known. Like, I'm not going to mention the name here. And I was interviewed by this Japanese lady. She interviewed me and she said, okay, it's a wrap. I'm going on vacation. I'll be back in a couple of weeks. We're still interviewing candidates because, we had a lot of applicants and blah, blah, blah. In a couple of days or so, my colleague is going to reach out to you. if he doesn't call you by so time, this is his number. Give him a call and tell him I asked you to call him regarding this position. I go, okay, well, you have yourself a wonderful vacation and blah blah. We left it at that. I never got a call back from the gentleman, and I followed the instruction to the T. I called him up and I said, hey, how you doing? I'm so and so. This lady asked me to give you a call if I don't hear from you, blah blah blah. And he goes, okay, well, we've decided to move ahead with a different candidate that best suits our needs. But before she went on vacation, she told me, you are actually top on my list right now. Like, there's nobody like, you got this. I'm like, okay, no problem. You have yourself a wonderful day. And I hung up the phone. Well, lo and behold, she gets back from vacation. She finds a different person, been filled for the position. And again, this is my assumption because she never directly told me this, but a couple of weeks into that, she fired that person. She called me back and she says to me, did my colleague ever call you? Did you call when I was away on vacation and I asked you to call if you don't hear from him? I said, yeah, I called and this is what happened. He goes, okay, I understand what's going on. And she gets off the phone, and then the vice president of the company, and this is a really big corporation, calls me up, right? And he says, okay, are you so and so? I say, yeah. And he goes, okay, you applied for so and so position? I say, yeah. And we kind of talked about it and everything and blah, blah, blah. And he got off the phone. He said, okay, we'll get back to you. Got off the phone, and they relisted the position on their website.
I remember that one.
Yeah. And the lady called me up. She said, okay, we put the position in again. And we have to just go through the motion again and go through the whole system application processes. And I told her, thank you very much, but I don't want to work there anymore. Not interested anymore.
Yeah.
So
that was the second time it happened to you, actually.
These some of the barriers to entries that you're going to face in Canada as an immigrant.
And for me, my last experience, even getting into a job that I thought was so good and so like my best fit job really in management ever, being the only woman in a team of 48 men and, just two other ladies there later, and being confident enough to pull projects together and just have, organize, and people were just beginning to feel like, why she, why her? And being the only hijabi is a lot of intimidation walking into a place where you look different. And I honestly you have to overcome these fears by being so courageous and, be the one to say, good morning. Hey guys, be the chatter one, it takes so much energy from you that then on top of that, people start to basically sideline you. Ignore you. I don't know how many people have been to work where you don't get to talk to anyone at all, except maybe when you meet someone in the kitchen and you're forced to say something to each other. I really cannot explain how people don't understand what an immigrant goes through. I mean, we're still a visible minority. Everywhere we go, it's still a courage to walk into a room, and people don't realize that. And even on council, it feels challenging sometimes just walking into the room, but you have to hold your face up high. Sometimes it's not like you're not wanting to be friendly. You can be shy some days. You can be just completely overwhelmed some days. And some days you just have the courage to carry on like normal. So I just feel like people need to know and acknowledge these little things. If you know an immigrant and you feel like you haven't really understood their full story, just ask. Ask them and they'll be willing to share their story. I will bring in some people within Oxford County who I've met over the years who are from pilots who came to this country and their hours not recognized to people who definitely had to start driving taxis and Ubers from being medical doctors and engineers. There's a lot that is going on. And when you see people on top of all that immigrants have had to endure, and you see people actually, count them out or talk down at them, even protesting in this new environment where people feel like everything is being blamed on the immigrant, you truly feel it's a double down on immigrants again. And not just immigrants, it's racism, because it's the visible immigrants that you sea of feeling the heat and all the negative energy has been directed to. So yeah, I'm calling out on everyone who knows someone to just call on them and listen to their stories, because every immigrant has a story. Even the Caucasian immigrants have a story, but they have a better, sense of assimilation and integration than the rest of us have. So I just call on everyone to have some compassion and humanity. And with that, I think we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for allowing me to have this conversation. I think it made us feel we've got a lot of tension out of our heads. And so, yeah, listen for our next episode.
Y'all have a wonderful day.
Thank you. It's January 1st. I interviewed my husband, Abdul Haliru, and peace to all of you for 2025.